We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world.
So what is the point of the hero's journey? Is it to train to beat the bad guys? Is it to save the world? Is it to become a more well-rounded and powerful individual? Well, sort of. I've always said that Campbell speaks and thinks cyclically, meaning he not only sees cyclical patterns everywhere in life, but he also jumps from thought to thought, relating everything to each other.
It's a cycle. It's a going and a return that the hero cycle represents.
The hero's journey is not just a journey to self-discovery, but a journey to shatter the established order and create a new community. You can't have one without the other. A person must find their true self before they can save others. The way back, the end of the hero's journey, is bringing back to the community what you have learned through the journey to yourself. See? Cyclical.
It's perfect. It does the cycle perfectly. It's not simple morality play. It has to do with the powers of life and their inflection through the action of man.
In other words, Star Wars is not about good versus evil, but about the cycle of life and the change that occurs when you decide what to do with what has been given to you by the world. It's not a template or a roadmap. Rather, the hero's journey is a way to view stories in order to better understand ourselves and our community. But as I've noted prior, the hero's journey does not always fully resonate with women, and we live in a society that views the feminine as lesser, and feminine traits are for girls, a common phrase that makes feminine traits seem infantile. The need for the feminine is present in Campbell's works. It's hiding in the journey to the subconscious and in the journey to finding one's full self, which contains both feminine and masculine traits. The need for the feminine is also present in the Star Wars saga, which, ironically, has not yet been completed and must end with its characters incorporating both the feminine and the masculine in order to reach a satisfying Campbellian conclusion. So let's again take an even deeper look into Maureen Murdock's complimentary A Heroine's Journey, and how Rey's journey has been and will continue to be a unique feminine power fantasy.
Most women know the hero's journey very well. They know how to gather their degrees and climb the corporate ladder and find the right spouse and have children. But many women haven't given themselves the time really to listen to themselves and find out what it is that they want. What's their journey?
The first step in this journey is the rejection of the feminine. This can happen for many reasons. For Rey, this happens because she was separated from her parents, a common theme in Star Wars. Murdock gives many examples of this myth from a psychological perspective, mostly from using the stories and dreams women have told in therapy. Rey most fits the archetype of the girl who was rejected by the mother, or at least from what we know, Rey believes her parents have abandoned her.
They were nobody.
They were filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money.
Murdock says that these women may function forever as the daughter, looking for approval, love, attention, and acceptance from a mother who is incapable of giving these. And if she continues to feel rejection, she will reject the feminine and search for recognition by the father and the patriarchal culture. And no matter how successful she is at proving herself to men, she'll find that she is still undervalued and overworked. Rey looks to Han and Finn for acceptance. On her road of trials, she accidentally lets out the Rathtars, but then is able to save Finn from one.
They had me! Put the door! That was lucky!
She uses her skills she's acquired from being a scavenger to prove herself worthy to Han.
I bypassed the compressor.
This need for acceptance is very much apparent with Ray, and the female viewer may feel a slight swell of pride when Han offers Ray a more permanent place by his side. With this newfound sense of worth, she's determined to deliver BB-8 to the Resistance, and then go back to her known world. This is when she finds herself delving into the unknown, into her subconscious for the first time. Ray first encounters her own subconscious in Maz's castle, her younger self screaming out to her from the saber. As Ray descends the steps underneath the castle, an image of Sleeping Beauty comes to mind. Just as Aurora symbolically died and was resurrected, this is the moment Ray descends into the world of the dead, of those that came before her. It's where her younger self and traumas are buried away. Maz tells Ray to stop waiting, they're never coming back, throwing Ray further into the conflict of who am I and where do I belong? For Ray, survival has been the key for so long. She's not had to think about what she wants because she's convinced herself that something or someone would come along to show her the path. Women are intimately familiar with this idea of waiting. Murdock states that women are waiters. Daddy's little girl waits by the window with her nose pushed up against the glass, peering into the darkness for the headlights of his car. In adolescence, she waits by the phone, anticipating the time when he will call. She waits for her first kiss, her first date, her first orgasm. Women are trained into a state of expectancy.
I'll get one. Don't be stupid, Connie. Someone somewhere someday might be interested. Just in case. Just in case, I'll be prepared.
In many fairy tales, the woman is taken out of this state by a man, and usually will find her true self through the process of waiting, identifying with the man and discovering her inner strengths, but not necessarily by the man's act of saving her. That aspect is for his growth.
Because waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought. Useless and disappointing.
But Ray's story goes beyond this simple fairy tale. When Ray is taken by Ben, a few feminine-coded things do occur. First, Ben is curious about her. He regards her as someone special, and he's been looking forward to meeting her. Second, Ben picks up Ray into a typical bridal carry. And third, as he's taking her to a ship, the music swells into the peak of the Romeo and Juliet theme. These are all indications of a love story, of a prince whisking the princess off her feet and onto his chariot. But Kylo Ren is a villain in the story, right?
It's a very mysterious thing, that electric thing that happens. And then the agony that can follow, which is that which the troubadours celebrate, the agony of the love, the sickness that the doctors cannot cure, the wound that can be healed only by the weapon that delivered the wound.
Meaning?
Well, the wound is the wound of my passion and agony of love for this creature. And the only one who can heal me is the one who delivered the blow,
So we often hurt most of the person we love and heal the hurt by the love that hurt.
That's something like that. That's the paradox of the job.
Rey being tied to the interrogation chair is a major trial in her journey. Not only does she defeat Kylo Ren at his own game by showcasing her mental strength, she's also able to trick the guard, showcasing her cleverness and adaptability. The game of wit and strength between man and woman is both illustrating a woman overcoming her female inferiority by recognizing her own feminine power, as well as a play between two opposites, challenging each other, recognizing similarities in one another. This sort of play between man and woman has a tension about it that may read to some women as sexual and wicked. It feels good to beat men at their own games. Along this part of her journey, the woman is slowly finding her self-worth in the masculine world. She realizes she is strong and capable and can save herself from the ogres and dragons.
She's just beginning to test her powers. The longer it takes to find her, the more dangerous she becomes.
Finn is almost always surprised by Rey's capabilities, and again we see a little bit of a female fantasy with this. It can be satisfying to women to see a heroine be talented and full of heart, surprising her male colleagues. It's not just surprising to Finn that she could get herself out of trouble. it's surprising to him that she isn't visibly suffering when he finds her. Ray doesn't have to get beat up or hurt in order for the women in the audience to see these as taxing trials. In fact, seeing women be hurt, beat, and at worst raped on screen is something we've seen a lot that supposedly makes the character more powerful. While it can be a valid storyline, it's not necessary when developing a character who is clever and capable. And Ray's tests and trials are far from over. She will experience much more pain and growth along all 3 films. She's not yet fully accepted her femininity. Murdock states that in order to achieve wholeness, women have to find their own autonomy. She has to have the confidence to stand on her own, not behind a man or in his shadow. Only then can she trust herself to find her way to her true self along the rest of her journey. When Ray's father figure is killed before her, she is relieved of that sense of self-worth that she had accrued because she was seeking Han's acceptance, not acceptance of herself. And then again, when she fights Kylo Ren in the forest, she attempts to prove herself to a man in a man's world, this time to Kylo. She gets a sense of pride when she overtakes him. This is the second time she's beaten him at his own game, this time overtaking him physically. She's now truly proven herself in the masculine world. Taking her boon of success, Rey moves on to the next step of her journey, feelings of spiritual aridity. This step is the beginning of the detour from the traditional hero's journey. This is when the heroine achieves what a man would have achieved in order to begin making his way back to the community, but she still feels incomplete. Women experiencing this will begin to feel lost. And yes, just as Rey saw a father figure in Han, she sees a similar figure in Luke. Ben even calls her out on it later.
It's your greatest weakness. Looking for them everywhere, in Han Solo, now in Skywalker.
She's still trying to fit into the masculine world, to prove herself now to Luke. This is when the Eros and Psyche myth begins to become apparent in the story, when the simple imagery of a love story shapes into 2 people truly trying to figure each other out.
Can you see my surroundings?
You're gonna pay for what you did.
I can't see yours. Just you.
Early concept art for The Last Jedi shows that man-made temples, from metal or the Force, or a combination of the 2, were the first ideas for the Jedi temples located on Ahch-To. But the final sets were all organic, or at least complemented rather than contradicted the island. Murdock notes that when a woman is descending into her inner goddess, she will most often seek out communion with nature. She will go on long walks by herself in the woods. She may treasure the feeling of the earth beneath her bare feet. She may even simply take up an outdoor hobby or pull nature into her home for the first time. As Rey journeys around Ahch-To, she comes across many feminine symbols that remind her that she is a woman. Then she begins to not only commune with her inner goddess, she also begins to commune with her animus. Kylo Ren sheds his mask and Rey begins to see him as Ben Solo. She is no longer trying to prove her worth to him, and she stops trying to fight him. She instead connects with him as her equal through their conversations in the Force bonds. Rey is seeing Ben as a part of her community. He not only holds her animus, her male side, but he has now become a potential partner. Many women share a dream of having a child that is not theirs. Well, they believe in the dream that it is their child, but they don't remember giving birth to it. I've personally had this dream, and it's pretty frightening. Sometimes in this dream, the woman will not have enough milk in her breast to feed this thing in her arms, or she will be generally afraid in the dream to harm it in any way. Maureen Murdock calls this the worm baby. She says that the image of the worm baby reminds me of the unmasked Darth Vader in George Lucas's Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker removes his father's mask and is shocked and saddened to see the undeveloped head of the warrior king. When I take off the mask of my father, I see a sad little boy wanting to be held, stroked, and told that he is loved just as he is. As I unmask the father within myself, the heroic aspect, I see my deep feminine nature that yearns to be acknowledged, talked with, cleansed, changed, and fed. But this connection is so fragile that at times I forget it. I certainly have enough milk to nurture this newborn feminine. I just have to remember. It may be that a woman's relationship to the undeveloped parts of her male figures gives her a clue to her true feminine nature. Just as the woman must, these men who have put away their feminine must find a way to go into the darkness and retrieve it. So when women call Kylo a baby, sure, it's just a joke to annoy people who hate the character, but it may also go back to that idea that women see the underdeveloped parts in Kylo that remind them of their lost feminine, their incompleteness. His anger reminds them of their anger against the masculine establishments and against their own weaknesses, making them not good enough for the masculine world. He's a baby because he needs love and nourishment from the feminine to be whole. We all do. When Rey discovers what happened between Luke and Ben, she feels an immense betrayal. Murdock describes this as the betrayal of the father and traces it back to the myth of Iphigenia, where a dutiful daughter is lured to her father's side, seemingly for marriage, but is betrayed and sacrificed by him to stop a war. Women feel themselves in this myth when they achieve successes after encouragement from their fathers, but then find themselves in an environment that is not friendly to women. Murdock says that women have a hard time saying no because it feels good to be chosen by men, to feel accepted by them in their world. But saying no to men and their ideal of the world and of success is what brings women to their own autonomy. So Rey says no. Throughout her time on Ahch-To, Rey has been slowly descending into the goddess. In the ancient Sumerian myth known as Inanna's Descent, the goddess Inanna, or Ishtar, descends to the underworld. On her journey, she is stripped of her clothing and jewelry, only to come eye to eye with the goddess of the underworld, her sister, who strikes her dead. Inanna is later resurrected by two creatures who are able to empathize with Inanna's sister and get her permission to revive Inanna. When she is resurrected, she does not take her anger out on her sister, but instead returns to her realm above the earth and punishes the man she finds who took her place on her throne while she was away. Murdock interprets this myth thusly. During the descent, a woman experiences a period of introversion or depression. She may feel an incredible sense of emptiness, of being left out, shunned, left behind, without value. She may feel homeless, orphaned, in a place of in-between. She may dream images of tunnels, subways, wombs, tombs, being swallowed by snakes, or finding herself like Jonah in the belly of the whale. If she can allow the descent to be a mindful initiation, she need not become lost in the dark. This quality of empathy or being with the pain helps one to move through it. If we have the patience to allow the process its full due, deep healing can occur. If we abort the process, we never allow ourselves to come to full term. Women and men need to support each other to honor the feminine cycle, which, like the cycles of life and nature, is one of death, decay, gestation, and rebirth. Rey's descent is long and full of suffering, but there is someone who is by her side for all of the major moments: Ben. In the myth of Eros and Psyche, Eros takes Psyche as his bride and tells her not to look at him at night or ask where he is during the day. But Psyche, through her own internal drama, challenges this order and looks at him at night. Eros finds out, of course, and, being an immature brat, leaves her to go be with his mother. Psyche, realizing her love for Eros, goes to his mother Aphrodite to get her man back, and the goddess Aphrodite assigns her tasks to complete in order to win back her son. Through completing these tasks, Psyche notices that she always has assistance from animals. It's Eros, the shapeshifter, helping her. Robert Johnson writes that in this myth, Eros is a woman's animus who is being strengthened, healed, brought out of his boyish characteristics, and made into a mature man, worthy of being her mate. The myth of Eros and Psyche is about the journey of a man and woman, side by side, becoming better for themselves and for each other. Rey is still undergoing her descent and connecting with her inner goddess, but now the goddess is truly inside of her. In order to go on to the next step of the heroine's journey, a woman must realize that she is descending. She must be aware of the need for the suffering. Murdock delves here into a lot about female sexuality and how women learn to embrace their sexual functions and reconnect their spirit with their body, a disconnect that happened long, long ago.
I'll help you.
When Rey is in Snoke's throne room, she is tossed around by his powers, once again stripped of her autonomy and control over her own body. This is a severe violation to women, and Ben cutting Snoke in half, then fighting by his side with his equal, is a satisfying follow-up. Look at that rage. This is a woman who knows her sacrifice, her love, and her power. Murdock writes that the woman who finds herself at this stage of her journey begins to see all life as sacred. The feminine preserves. The feminine sees similarities between all beings and exhibits compassion and mercy. It also demands protection for the young and less fortunate. Kathy Kollwitz, a German artist who lived through the First World War and the rise of Nazi Germany, drew images of working-class women and the terrifying reality of their sacrifice for their children during time of war and poverty. She herself had lost her son in the First War and suffered greatly alongside the women of the proletariat. Her art was labeled by the Nazis as un-German and degenerate, but is now seen as an essential part of German humanistic history. Murdock uses her story as an example of a woman who is deeply in touch with the feminine nature of love, sacrifice, and hope. When a woman climbs out of her descent and recognizes her suffering and sacrifice, she embraces a new meaning in her life. She yearns for human companions and a deep connection to the world. She learns being instead of doing. Rey's journey up to this point is not only deeply feminine, but also poignant in what it means for Star Wars as a whole. The idea that Rey, the main character of this trilogy, does not come from the Skywalker line fits into this female fantasy because it's allowing women to have their own matriarch, who is actually disconnected from the overwhelmingly masculine narrative of the Skywalker legacy. Rey is no one because Rey is ours. Rey's story is unique in that it mirrors both the mythic, psychological journeys of women as well as the classic Disney fairy tale. It shows us that women can have heroic adventures just as their male counterparts can, and those adventures can lead them to a better understanding of who they are, in addition to true love and true equal partnership. It contradicts the androcentric stories of women and pushes the limits for how a woman's story can be told in mainstream, family-friendly films. Rey's journey is still not over yet. She still has to heal her mother-daughter split, perhaps with Leia, a motherly figure, or maybe she does find her real mother, who did abandon her for reasons we do not yet know. We see her with a wooden staff in an image for the rise of Skywalker. She's swapped out her need to be accepted in the masculine world for a communion with the natural one. The next step will be for her to heal her wounded masculine, which will likely be her reconnecting with her masculine power, as well as reconnecting with Ben Solo. There are a lot of fun things that happen in this step, and I feel like the union between Ben and Rey will be incredibly beautiful. It is essentially when the woman marries her animus to herself, becoming the mistress of heaven, of earth, and of the underworld. She shares this wisdom with the children of the world, who are symbolically her children. This last step takes the woman beyond duality. And because the woman has become so connected with the community and to the collective unconscious, she naturally will affect the world. The compassion we experience together will enable each one of us to move closer to our understanding of diversity rather than being threatened by it. We are a pilgrim people. We are on a journey together to learn how to honor and preserve the dignity of all life forms, seen and unseen. Therein lies our heroic power. Wow, that was a lot. I guess I could have just told everyone to go follow the Rumi quote spot on Twitter, and that would have been a lot shorter. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video wherever you can. And yeah, cheers.